Guys, welcome back to my channel. Perpetual here. If you're new, you are warmly welcome. And guys, thank you so much for joining me today as we meal prep for the start of the month. So tomatoes are in season and they are extremely affordable. So what I did is I got a whole bunch and I'm going to cook some down so that I can store it in the freezer, and I'll be using the rest to make stew today. And then the really hard ones, I store them in the fridge so that I can use it when I need fresh tomatoes. Anyway, we're gonna get started on our stew. I am making a huge batch of chicken stew because I need it. So ginger, garlic, habanero pepper, that trio is my go-to all the time. I am using fresh broiler, so that's the soft one, and it is fresh, so it tastes amazing. And of course, I go in with rosemary and anise seeds, and then I also add some seasoning tablet. I'm using a full one because this is a huge chicken. I'm not adding any additional water because I don't want so much stock. What I'm gonna do is, because I washed the chicken, just the residual water and then the natural waters just seeping from the chicken will be enough of a stock for me to use. If I do end up with too much stock, because sometimes that happens, I just store it in the freezer. And then I found some chicken breast in the freezer, so I tossed that in there as well. I'll just add it to the stew. Might as well, because I was really cleaning out the freezer. Alright, so I'm just going to start frying the chicken in batches. I'm using a wok just so that I can cover like more surface area and it will cook faster. And then when I am done, I will get started on my stew. Really random, but right now, like on my list of must-haves, I need a deep freezer because I'm looking at the amount of tomatoes I could have bought and cooked down and frozen for when tomatoes are expensive, and I'm like, my freezer is not big enough. I will definitely need to invest in a deep freezer, like a chest freezer, really soon. After the chicken is done frying, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to strain the oil so that I get the little bits out of it, and I'm going to be using the same oil for my stew. And then just about add some onion, ginger, garlic, and then random shot of one of the tomatoes that has cooked down. I'm cooking a lot more. Anyway, after the onions, this was onions, bell pepper, scotch bonnet peppers. What else did I put in here? I think that's it, ginger and garlic. And then I'm gonna add my tomato paste. Feel free to add your tomato paste before you add the onion, ginger, garlic, pepper, that mix. But I like to do it this way sometimes too. And then I am adding one batch of my cooked tomatoes. The ones that has cooked down, it will cook a lot faster. Like my stew will be done in no time. I ended up adding another batch because I wanted a lot more stew. So with those tomatoes, what I do is I portion it out before I freeze it so that it is a lot easier when I need to use it. As in, I don't need to thaw out a huge portion. So that's what I would typically do. Anyway, time to season my stew. I am adding a seasoning tablet and I am adding rosemary and anise seeds. And then I go in with curry powder. I'm using 2 sachets, which is about 2 tablespoons, because again, this is a huge pot of stew. Now, this base stew would be perfect to freeze when it cooks down and you don't add any protein to it. And then what you would do is when you're ready, you would add in whether it's your chicken, your beef, whatever you would like to add. And then if you have stock from that particular protein, you can add it as well. Before I get started on my kontomire, what you saw me add there were the chicken breast, the small pieces. I had cut it in chunks and kept it in the freezer. That's what I just added to my tomato stew. Now onto my kontomire. I like to do a combination of any neutral oil, sometimes even coconut oil, and then my palm oil. And then I went in with my momone, and then I added my onions. Now, because I was truly making chicken stew, I went ahead to add all my chicken into my stew and allowed it to simmer. And then we're back to my kontomire stew. Well, the start of the kontomire stew. The onions are sauteing nicely. I just added some hot habanero peppers, and then I added onions. That was the blend that just went in, and after a few minutes I added some tomatoes. And then, just as I did with my stew, I am adding a seasoning tablet. I used half of it. when I make kontomire and actually bean stew too, I tend to limit the amount of seasoning that I use. I'm not like a ginger garlic kind of person for these kind of stews. I like to keep it really simple. And then I'm just adding some smoked mackerel that I've just broken up into chunks. And like I said, I was cleaning out my freezer, so I found a piece of smoked mackerel as well. So I went ahead to add that to my stew. Extra protein, perfect way to use it up so that it doesn't go to waste, because if it just sits in the freezer, I'll probably even forget about it. And now I am using some melon seeds or egusi, however you say it. I blended it with some salt. You need to add salt when you're blending it because that is what will help it curdle and for you to get that egg-like texture. And then I got my kontomire ready. I added some water and I'm going to allow it to steam. And then I'm going to check on my stew base. And like I said, if you add salt to the egusi, it does curdle nicely. So when you're making the kontomire, you do want to watch your salt. You want to add the salt at the end. And today I decided to do a mix of egusi and eggs. I could have even blended it, like mixed it together, but I just did it separately. Give it a quick stir and then check on my kontomire as well. I always steam my kontomire before I add it to the stew. You can add it raw, but I never trust myself that I've cooked it long enough. And I don't want to get that like itchy, scratchy throat feeling. So I always steam it for a few minutes before straining it and then adding it to my stew. And like I mentioned earlier, at this point, after stirring it, you can adjust your salt if need be, but I always leave it to the end because I have added salt to the egusi and I also added a seasoning tablet. And on a day like today, I didn't need to add anything. And guys, once it was ready, I had to try it, right? Quality control. And guys, it was absolutely delicious. I had it with some boiled yam and some hard boiled eggs. And that's it. I was set for at least a week. And guys, thank you all so much for joining me today on this delicious journey. I will see y'all again very soon. Take care, guys. Bye.